Flattery feels good. It slips into our ears like warm honey, smooth and sweet, telling us exactly what we secretly hope might be true. You're brilliant, you're different, you're more talented than the rest, you deserve more recognition. In small doses, appreciation is healthy, but flattery is something else. It isn't just kindness, it isn't simple praise. It is a calculated form of influence, and sometimes, a weapon. Today, we are going to explore the dark side of flattery, how it works, why it works, and how it can quietly manipulate your decisions, relationships, and even your identity. To understand the danger, we first need to understand the psychology behind it. Human beings are wired for validation. From childhood, approval shapes our behavior. When a parent smiles, we repeat the action. When a teacher praises us, we feel motivated. The brain releases dopamine when we receive compliments, activating reward pathways, similar to those triggered by food or social acceptance. Flattery taps directly into that reward system. It tells you what you want to hear, often exaggerating your strengths while carefully ignoring your flaws. Unlike genuine praise, which is specific and grounded in truth, flattery is vague, inflated, and strategically delivered. Think about the workplace. An employee compliments their boss excessively. They laugh at every joke. They constantly highlight how visionary the leader is. At first, it seems harmless. But slowly, it creates imbalance. The boss begins to rely on this steady stream of affirmation. Critical voices feel less comfortable speaking up. Honest feedback becomes rare. The flatterer gains influence not through competence, but through ego management. Decisions begin to shift, not based on logic, but on who feeds the leader's self-image. Over time, this erodes accountability and clarity. This dynamic has existed for centuries. In royal courts, courtiers survived not by telling the truth, but by telling kings what they wanted to hear. Consider figures like Niccolò Machiavelli, who observed the dangerous environment surrounding rulers. In his political treatise, The Prince, he warned leaders about flatterers, describing them as one of the greatest threats to wise governance. A ruler surrounded by constant praise loses touch with reality. Without honest counsel, power becomes distorted. History repeatedly shows that leaders who cannot distinguish between sincere loyalty and manipulative flattery often make catastrophic decisions. Flattery thrives where insecurity lives. That's the uncomfortable truth. The more uncertain we are about ourselves, the more susceptible we become. If someone doubts their competence, a single compliment about their intelligence feels transformative. If someone feels overlooked, being told they are underrated creates a bond. The flatterer studies these emotional gaps. They identify where validation is most craved and supply it generously. It is not random, it is targeted. One of the most powerful aspects of flattery is that we rarely believe we are affected by it. We assume we are rational, we think we can tell when someone is being insincere, but research in social psychology suggests otherwise. Studies have shown that even when people know a compliment may be strategically motivated, they still respond positively to it. The emotional reaction often overrides the logical suspicion. In other words, you can know someone is flattering you and still like them more for it. This is known as the ingratiation effect. Ingratiation is a deliberate attempt to make oneself likable to gain influence. It often involves mirroring behavior, agreeing excessively, or highlighting shared values. Flattery is a central tool in this strategy. When someone consistently validates your opinions, you begin to associate them with comfort and affirmation. This emotional comfort can subtly shape your choices. You may trust them more. You may support their ideas. You may defend them against criticism, all because they fed your self. The dark side becomes even clearer in personal relationships. Romantic flattery often begins as intense admiration. You're perfect. I've never met anyone like you. You're the only person who understands me. These statements can feel intoxicating. But when admiration is exaggerated and constant, it can be a form of love bombing. Love bombing is a manipulation tactic in which overwhelming praise and attention are used to create rapid emotional dependence. Once attachment forms, the dynamic often shifts. The same person who placed you on a pedestal may later use withdrawal of praise as control. The contrast creates confusion and emotional instability. In toxic relationships, flattery becomes conditional. Compliments are given when behavior aligns with the manipulator's expectations. Approval is withdrawn when independence appears. Over time, the recipient becomes conditioned to seek validation from the source of praise. Self-worth slowly transfers from internal stability to external approval. This is one of the most damaging long-term effects of manipulative flattery. It relocates your sense of value outside of yourself. Flattery also plays a significant role in politics and mass influence. Charismatic figures often use praise strategically. They tell audiences that they are the smartest voters, the true patriots, or the real backbone of society. This creates an emotional alliance. The audience feels seen and elevated. In return, they may become more loyal. Throughout history, leaders have used collective flattery to unify groups while isolating dissenters. By praising one group's identity, they create a sense of superiority that strengthens allegiance. In ancient Rome, figures like Julius Caesar understood the power of public image and admiration. Public praise reinforced authority, but excessive flattery also contributed to paranoia and political tension. The same system that builds influence through admiration can also destabilize it. When leaders become addicted to praise, they may interpret criticism as betrayal rather than feedback. This narrows perspective and encourages authoritarian tendencies. The danger of flattery is not only external, it also affects internal growth. When someone constantly tells you that you are exceptional without acknowledging areas for improvement, it creates stagnation. Growth requires honest reflection. Constructive criticism is uncomfortable, but it sharpens skill and character. Flattery dulls that edge. If you believe you are already extraordinary in every way, why improve? Why question yourself? Why adapt? This is particularly visible in creative industries. Artists, entrepreneurs, and influencers often receive waves of exaggerated praise from followers. While encouragement is motivating, constant uncritical admiration can distort self-perception. Without grounded feedback, creative evolution slows. The individual may begin prioritizing applause over authenticity. The need for validation can overshadow genuine exploration. Flattery also intersects with power dynamics in subtle ways. In hierarchical environments, lower-ranking individuals may flatter superiors to gain protection or opportunity. While this may appear strategic, it can foster resentment among peers. It creates environments where honesty is risky and performance becomes secondary to pleasing authority. Over time, organizational culture shifts from merit-based to ego-based. There is also a cognitive bias, known as the self-enhancement bias. Humans naturally prefer information that confirms positive beliefs about themselves. Flattery feeds this bias directly. It aligns perfectly with our desire to view ourselves favorably. Because of this, we may unconsciously reward those who flatter us, even when we recognize the exaggeration. The brain does not entirely separate authenticity from affirmation. Both trigger similar emotional responses. Consider social media. Algorithms reward engagement, and engagement often increases with praise. Comments filled with admiration create dopamine spikes. Over time, individuals may become conditioned to post content that maximizes positive feedback. The digital landscape amplifies flattery culture. Likes, shares, and glowing comments can blur the line between genuine appreciation and performative affirmation. The risk here is subtle addiction. When validation becomes the primary source of emotional reward, identity becomes fragile. Flattery is not always malicious. Sometimes people flatter out of habit or cultural conditioning. In certain cultures, indirect communication and exaggerated politeness are normal social tools. However, the dark side emerges when flattery is intentional, excessive, and tied to hidden motives. The key distinction lies in intention and imbalance. Another important aspect is how flattery influences decision-making. Studies in behavioral economics show that people who receive compliments before negotiations are more likely to make concessions. Compliments create warmth. Warmth increases trust. Increased trust reduces skepticism. This chain reaction can lead to poor judgment. In business deals, this can cost money. In personal choices, it can cost peace of mind. Flattery also operates in mentorship and leadership contexts. A mentor who only praises but never challenges may feel supportive, but growth stalls. Conversely, a leader who is constantly flattered may start valuing loyalty over truth. Innovation suffers in environments where critical voices are silenced by a culture of admiration. The psychological trap deepens when flattery becomes part of identity. If you are consistently told you are the smart one, you may avoid situations that threaten that label. If you are praised as naturally talented, you may fear effort, because effort suggests imperfection. Research by psychologist Carol Dweck in her book Mindset highlights how praise focused on fixed traits can limit resilience. When identity is built on inflated traits rather than effort, failure feels catastrophic. The dark side of flattery is not just about manipulation by others, it is also about self-deception. We sometimes flatter ourselves. We ignore weaknesses. We exaggerate strengths. Self-flattery protects ego in the short term but hinders growth in the long term. Honest self-assessment is uncomfortable but necessary. So how do we protect ourselves? Awareness is the first step. Pay attention to patterns. Is the praise specific or vague? Is it consistent with reality? Does it come with hidden requests? Does the person praising you also provide honest feedback? Genuine appreciation is balanced. It acknowledges strengths without denying flaws. Healthy relationships include both affirmation and accountability. If someone only ever agrees with you, that is not loyalty. It may be strategy. If someone never challenges you, they may not be invested in your growth. The people who truly care are often the ones willing to risk your temporary discomfort for your long-term improvement. It is also important to examine your own vulnerabilities. Where do you crave validation the most? Intelligence, appearance, success, belonging. Those areas are entry points. When you know your emotional gaps, you become less reactive when someone fills them too perfectly. Flattery feels harmless because it is pleasant. but pleasure can cloud perception. Just as sugar tastes good but harms in excess, flattery in excess erodes clarity. It creates dependency, distorts judgment, and shifts power dynamics. It can turn leaders into tyrants, lovers into manipulators, and organizations into echo chambers. The antidote is not cynicism. It is discernment. Appreciate compliments, but question exaggeration. Value affirmation, but seek truth. Encourage others, but do not inflate. And most importantly, build self-worth that does not rely entirely on external applause. Because when your confidence is rooted internally, flattery loses its grip. It becomes what it should have been all along, a pleasant gesture, not a steering wheel for your life. The dark side of flattery is subtle. It whispers rather than shouts. It smiles rather than threatens. But its influence can be profound. And once you learn to recognize it, you begin to see it everywhere in boardrooms, in romances, in politics, in social media feeds, and even in your own thoughts. The next time someone tells you exactly what you want to hear, pause, ask yourself not only whether it feels good, but whether it is true. That single moment of awareness may protect you from decisions shaped not by clarity, but by the sweet, seductive power of flattery.